This is just a follow-up to my last video. There was some interest in what camera I was going to buy after selling my Leica. So this just kind of goes into some of my thought processes on why I chose what I chose. But first, I'd like to thank everyone who watched the last video and commented. Some people agreed, some people disagreed. There was some good back and forth. And I think it was the best of YouTube, where basically people who are passionate about their hobbies could get together and just kind of give their 2 cents. And say what you will about Leica, it definitely does elicit a strong response. When I bought the Leica, it was supposed to be kind of my dream old man retirement for photography kind of camera. It was less about the output of the camera and its technical merits and more about the experience and the enjoyment of using the camera. So when that didn't work out for me, I kind of went 180 degrees into the other direction, and I wanted a camera that would give me the best possible image quality. Since phase one was simply out of the question, that basically left me with Hasselblad and Fujifilm. And I really like Hasselblad's aesthetics and UI, but everything else for my needs, I think Fujifilm met better. So I went ahead and bought the Fujifilm GFX 102. And now that I think about it, I've actually owned most GFX bodies, which actually would make it seem like this is a bad choice for me and it's something that I'll end up selling. But I think the timing is right this time. So when the GFX first came out with the 50S, I got it because it was medium format. But at the time, it was the wrong choice for me. Obviously, the lens choices weren't mature yet. It was a pretty slow camera, and at that time, I was still doing things that required more speed and better autofocus. And so after, I think, 6 months or so, I ended up selling that camera. Still, some of my favorite images came from that camera, but it definitely wasn't the right choice for me then. I got the 50R. I just liked that rangefinder body design, and I thought, oh yeah, this will be a camera I can use just like a Leica, except it wasn't a Leica, and it was big and chunky and ergonomically not the greatest. So I ended up selling that one. And then I also got the GFX 100S, and weirdly enough, that camera was a camera that met all of my needs, but I ended up selling it because I got seduced by speed. And for whatever reason, every so often, like the high speed cameras like the Sony A1, I get seduced by them and think about how cool it is to own them and how responsive they are and how it'll give me that decisive moment. And I end up buying them, and I don't ever use them to its capabilities because I'm primarily a portrait photographer and you just don't really need that much speed for it. But when I look back on it, the 100S basically hit everything that I wanted it to do. I just, got that wanderlust, and I sold it. So when it came between the 100S and the 102, I ended up going with the 102 mainly for the small things. I wanted a really good EVF, so when I did use manual focus lenses, it wouldn't be so much of a chore. And while the 100S EVF is okay, there's definitely a lot better out there. And I really enjoyed using the Sony A1's EVF. And so when I heard that the 102's EVF was also going to be a really high resolution EVF, it was very attractive. And then everything else was just small things. Like when you use the GFX 100S, even with UHS-2 cards, I noticed that there'd always be somewhat of a lag when you wanted to hit playback and, review your images quickly. And with 102, because it's using that CF Express Type B, it's just much more snappy and quick, and just overall the usability is just quicker and more responsive, and it's less waiting on your end, and which wasn't terrible with the 100S, but it was just something I always noticed that the camera was always just like half a step slower than I wanted it to be, and the GFX 102 seems to have solved all of those problems. Video wasn't like a huge concern of mine, but since the video was improved, that was also attractive. But weirdly enough, the 102 I chose over the 100S mainly just for the EVF and just small things, just it being a little bit of a more responsive camera. And that's kind of why I chose it over the 100S and spent way more money for marginal improvements, but thinking in line with the Leica and saying like, hey, this is the camera that I want to stick with for a long time, and maybe this will be kind of like the end of my journey as a portrait photographer kind of camera. And then after that, this camera, once it's all said and done, I'll just have, I don't know, the iPhone 50 or whatever comes out at that point when I'm kind of done with carrying lenses and cameras and that kind of stuff. So the lenses that I got with the 102 are the GF55 1.7 and GF 110 f2. Again, because I'm a portrait photographer, I like having the ability to have shallow depth of field when I want it, which is most of the time, even though I'm trying to do better these days on, incorporating more of the background into the shot and not just trying to blow everything out. But it's nice to have that ability because you can always stop down, but you can't make the aperture any bigger. I really like the 80mm f1.7, and I used to own the 80 and the 110, and I actually sold the 110 because I preferred the rendering of the 80 over the 110. But when the 55 came out, it kind of changed how I viewed my lens selection. Like before, I think I would have just gotten the 80mm, but there was no 55, and 110 was too close to 80. So out of the two, that's the one I would have kept. But because the 55 exists now, I think the 110 is a much better complement. It doesn't like overlap as the way the 80 would overlap with the 55. And so that's basically the only reason I went with the 110 over the 80. I think both are phenomenal lenses. I think the 110 is a little bit more clinically perfect, while the 80 has a little more character. And honestly, you can't go wrong with either one. I mean, it's just really a matter of taste. I found both lenses to perform excellent, and it would take a much better photographer than I to, complain about the performance of either. The 55 has been a pleasant surprise for me. I don't really like the 35mm focal length, but since this is a little bit longer at 40, and some people were always saying that 40 is really good and, it's better than 35 or 50. And so far, I kind of have to agree. I've been more of a 50 guy than a 35 guy, but 40 seems to be the sweet spot. It's wider than the 50 and longer than, oh, all right, that just sounds stupid now, that's obvious. But I do find 40 to be a pretty enjoyable focal length. I like it way more than I ever liked a 35mm, and it seems to be wide enough that it's kind of like stopped any desire for me to get like a 24mm lens, although in the future I may get the 23mm, which is I think equivalent to like an 18mm on full frame, just so I can have something like really, really wide when I want to have kind of like a large establishing shot. But I think the 55 and 110 are a great portrait combo for me. 110 I plan on using for the most part on my outdoor portraiture stuff, with the 55 just for a larger establishing shot if I don't have the space to back up, or for indoors. So I've only owned the full kit for couple of days now. I've had the 102 and the 55 for about a month, I think, and the weather's been pretty bad here in Korea, so I haven't really been able to go out there and shoot as much. But I did test the 102 with the TT Artisan's 90mm with an adapter, and it's a fun combination. It creates kind of a very artistic look. It's almost like a painterly, but I got the 110 because it's not a look you're going to want all the time, and it vignettes pretty badly on the corners, which sometimes doesn't matter so much. But I've also had some shots where I had to crop in, and to me, if you have to crop on the GFX format, it kind of defeats the purpose. Like, why am I shooting on this baby medium format and not full frame if I'm not going to take advantage of the entire frame to fill it? So hopefully in the future, as the weather warms up, I'll get to enjoy this combination more. For some of you who were curious about what I chose, I hope this kind of gives you my reasoning on why I did it. And I hope this is kind of the last time I talk about gear personally for a while, because I want this to kind of be what I settle on for some time, which was supposed to be my Leica setup. But again, because of unexpected vision issues, that just wasn't the combo that I was able to end up with, which on a final note, it's just I guess I didn't make it clear, or maybe some people skipped over it, but the Leica was calibrated just fine, because people who had normal vision or like well-corrected vision, they had no problems focusing and nailing focus on that camera. And I did use all the diopters and the magnifiers, and it just doesn't work for me because I have really bad astigmatism and I'm nearsighted. So if they were to correct for like the super nearsightedness, then my medium to long vision would suffer terribly, and vice versa. So like my prescriptions for my contacts and my glasses is kind of like an in-between, which unfortunately just really doesn't work for focusing with that rangefinder. So that's why, I said I couldn't see with it. And then I think some other people commented on using the VisiFlex, but I own that too. And if I have to use the VisiFlex, it defeats the purpose of owning a Leica M. Like, you own a Leica M to use the rangefinder. Otherwise, you would use Leica SL if you wanted to stay in the Leica family, or just, any of the awesome mirrorless cameras from other brands. So my reason for buying the Leica was for the rangefinder experience, and it didn't work out for me because of my vision. Maybe in the future, when they can clone eyes, or you can get mechanical or robotic eyes, maybe that's something I'll revisit. But until then, I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that the rangefinder experience, while it was wonderful, while I was able to enjoy it, is kind of a chapter closed in my photographic journey. And now it's back to mirrorless. And in the mirrorless world, I think I'm finally past being tempted by high-speed cameras, because I know personally that's not the photography I do. And I also think I'm past being tempted by hybrid cameras, because I'm always like, oh, wow, those video features are awesome, but I'm not really a videographer. I mean, at this stage of my life, I'm primarily a photographer. And unless I'm able to sell a kidney or something, phase one's just never going to be an option. So I think I'm pretty content with my choice with the Fujifilm GFX system, although the Hasselblad is still a little bit tempting. But I think I'm just not going to use that camera, so I won't be tempted by it, because like I said, except for how it looks and the UI, I think the Fujifilm fits me much, much better, and they use the same sensors. So. All right, I think that's enough rambling, and yeah, I hope that answers some of the questions or the curiosity some of you had on what my choice would be, and I hope videos are a little bit more frequent. I had a gym injury, and then I had like a health issue, so that's why I haven't been able to respond or make a video in a while. But I did enjoy all the comments and replies and going back and forth. The photographic community can be very awesome, and I learned some things from people I disagreed with, and I was able to commiserate with people who, had similar issues that I had. All right, goodbye.